It was over 35 years ago when I first started getting involved in knife combatives. It was not an official involvement. It was me buying books from companies like Paladin Press and Desert Publications, I believe, and Loom Panics, and learning as much as I could through printed material and practicing with my cousin Jason Pelfrey. Jason and I bought floppy rubber training knives and went to work, following the advice we got from military manuals, and then I picked up the book Knives, Knife Fighting and Related Hassles, of which I've had about 3 copies over the time, by Mark McYoung. And that really hit home with us. We followed his method as best we could. Zoom ahead about 5 years later, I'd been doing some training in Kung Fu, then Muay Thai, and finally I found someone who taught Filipino martial arts, because Filipino martial arts was on my radar. And I started training with Norm Stackhouse, and then through him, Guru Ross Doramal. And it was more stick-oriented, but we also did the tabak maliit, or pocket stick, and every so often, knife defense and how to use a knife. Guru Ross even told me a little bit about the balisong when I bought my first balisong, which it was illegal in Canada, but they were still available. Anyway, but that was when I began formal training under different martial arts masters and gurus. I started training in as much Filipino martial arts as I could. I had a very decent background in Muay Thai, which I really appreciate. I think that's the greatest base I could have found for martial arts. Anyway, I went to workshops and I constantly sparred and trained with mock knives because I was fascinated with edged weapons. In the 90s, I picked up Full Contact magazine as well as fighting knives, and that introduced me to another one of my heroes, one of my mentors who I've never actually trained with, but who has given me amazing advice over the years, James Albert Keating, the godfather of knife combatives in North America. He is a true master tactician and master of the blade. He should be sought out by everyone who's interested in edged weapons and other systems of martial arts as well, including some internal systems, because Master-at-Arms James Keating is a living encyclopedia of martial arts and one of the most brilliant minds in martial arts. Anyway, so this is where I began. This is how I began. And over decades, I was always training with knives. I was always researching. From Paladin Press, I had so much material. And then I started buying videos. The first appearance of Mike Janich, where he was in the 3 knife videos with James Webb. I had those in my collection. I had some Lameko stuff on edged weapons. I had a balisong video from Datu Shashir, who was one of my guru's first instructors. I mean, I had everything I could find on edged weapons, and I was practicing constantly. One booklet I really treasured was Put 'em Down and Take 'em Out, Knife Fighting Techniques from Folsom Prison by Don Pentecost. This one really showed the criminal use of the blade, as well as video defense against edged weapons that was made by a police department in the States, I don't know where, and featured Dan Inosanto in the video. But it showed how criminals tend to use knives and was a good eye-opener on what people actually do when they want to stick a knife into another person. The videos or DVDs I got years later from the Dog Brothers called Die Less Often were also great resources. These resources started me on an interest in more practical knife fighting than the flow drill based Filipino knife systems. Now, don't get me wrong, I needed that base. I think it's important to understand that very few of us who do edged weapons combatives usually, but not always, have a background in Filipino martial arts. About 3 years ago, when I found out about the Medusa edged weapon system, I jumped in. There was something that I wanted, and I became an instructor. Jason Schultz was my instructor, and in 2023, I started instructing this system because I believe it's one of the most valuable systems out there for edged weapons. First of all, it can give somebody the skills to use edged weapons, or the tactics, I should say, because it is tactic-based and not skill-based. But it can give them the tactics to be able to quickly download it into their system and use it in a short period of training and be very effective with an edged weapon. Because the reality is, it is attitude more than skill that makes a knifer as opposed to a knife fighter. For the prepared defender, having these very basic and very effective skill sets or tactics can be beneficial if they're ever forced to improvise a cutting tool to be a weapon of self-protection. Also, Medusa teaches instructors how to be good bad guys, so that when they teach knife defense, what they're teaching has a little more base in reality, in the reality of knife violence. So you can better prepare students to defend against the blade. And through the Medusa system, I was also introduced to Western Piper, another excellent criminal-based system that has been adapted for civilians to use with reasonable force and reasonable intentions. These systems have changed how I look at the knife and have helped me adapt to become a better knife instructor and a better knife handler. I'm not a knife fighter. I am not a knifer. I am a prepared defender who wants the kind of skills that can save lives in the worst case scenario. If you are interested in these kinds of subjects, as well as other ways of self-protection, please support my Patreon. There are a lot of good lessons on self-defense, martial arts, and combatives there. Thank you so much. Have a great day.